Namaskar, greetings from the island of Mauritius. A very good day to you, ladies and gentlemen. My presentation today, That Others May Live, the epic journey of Indian indentured laborers in Mauritius. Mauritius was the first British colony to import labor from India on a gigantic scale. In 1834, after the abolition of slavery in British colonies, the island was chosen by the British government to be the first colony for what it called the Great Experiment in the use of free labor to replace the slave that had emancipated. Thus started one of the most massive migration of Indian labor chronicled in human history. It marks the beginning of an odyssey across the Kalapani, a heart-wrenching story of exile and exploitation across the Indian Ocean. Sources reveal that between 1834 and 1920, almost 700,000 indentured laborers from India landed at Abravasighat in Plevitz, Mauritius. According to Mauritian historian Ruslan Chanlao, out of that number of engaged laborers, only a third stayed. One third returned to their homeland, mainly India, whereas the final third did not survive. Also, a shocking reality is that many of those who chose to return to India after their 5-year contract went back mostly empty-handed. In some cases, other poor laborers ended their period of indenture indebted to their employers and thus could not return to India because the return passage, which was previously included in the terms of their contract, had been abolished. They were therefore forced to re-engage for a further period for a mere pittance. Those who refused to do so were sent to the vagrant depot, which was more or less like a prison. If after 3 months they still refused to work, they were dealt with as incorrigible vagrants. As soon as they set foot on the Abravasighat, the indentured laborers immediately realized that they had been lured by a system which promised them the moon, but in reality was meant to exploit them. A seasoned politician, Sir Kher Jagat Singh, had this to say about the Girmitya. And when on their way to Mauritius, they were sailing down the Ganges, they felt happy and filled with hope. But when they reached Plevitz and having climbed the step of the immigration square, it gradually dawned upon them that they had become the unwilling system of a system devised to stultify their body and stifle their spirit. Yet they were undaunted and decided to oppose hatred with love, cruelty with forbearance, and inhumanity with generosity. It was even reported that they were duped by recruiting agents who told them that they would find gold and silver under the rock of sugarcane field, which made them believe that Mauritius was the land of milk and honey, but were horrified to see that they had been sent to some kind of infernal region where they were subjected to all kinds of injustices and where the conditions of work on the estate were inhuman and brutal. The contract was for a period of 5 years with a salary of 5 rupees per month. Also, a percentage from the meager salary was deducted for the cost of the voyage from India to Mauritius. They had to work every day except Sunday from sunrise to sunset. And the most aberrant part was the provision of double cut. That is, if the laborer was absent for 1 day, the employers would cut 2 days of his salary. The laborers were housed in dingy shelters, in complete isolation from the rest of the island, and were made to work like beasts of burden, and were very often deprived of even their scanty salary and basic ration. Almost every day, there were cases of brutal beating, harassment, abuses, and humiliation. Their movement outside the plantation site was severely curtailed. Decisions about the work pattern, working hours, settlement, etc., were made without any consideration for their tradition and absenteeism from work for whatever reason was severely punished, not only by double cut of wages, but also sometimes with imprisonment. Women were subjected to all kinds of exploitation, rape, and sexual abuse. Adolphe de Plevitz was born in France to a family from Westphalia and arrived in Mauritius in 1858 when he got married to the daughter of a planter, Mr. François Rivet. While managing the estate of his father-in-law at La Retraite in the district of Flat, he was deeply moved by the plight of the Indian laborers and decided to draw attention to their condition of work and treatment. In 1870, he wrote a petition, also called the Plevitz Petition, on their behalf, and it was signed by 9,401 Indian immigrants. Eventually, this historic petition was sent to the governor, Gordon, by de Plevitz himself. Between 1872 and 1873, a royal commission of inquiry was appointed by the British imperial government in London and sent to Mauritius. For many months, it carried out a lengthy investigation into the working and living condition, as well as the grievances of the island Indian laborers. In 1875, in their voluminous report, the commissioners made several recommendations to alleviate the terrible plight of the Girmitias. Gandhiji's visit to Mauritius in 1901 was a wake-up call to the Indian immigrants. He held several meetings with opinion leaders in Mauritius and convinced them that their emancipation involved engaging in local politics and educating their children. The Indian immigrants followed Gandhiji's advice as they were determined to take the future in their own hands. To further help them in this uphill struggle, Gandhiji sent Maninal Doctor, a pioneering barrister and crusader for human rights, to Mauritius. Maninal Doctor successfully instilled the importance of politics and education in the minds of the Indian indentured laborers. He visited plantations across the island and met laborers, encouraging them to fight for their rights. Maninal Doctor also helped establish the Arya Samaj in Mauritius, and after he left for India in 1911, his work was continued by other indentured laborers. In the early 1940s, another great champion of Indian laborers, Basdev Bisundayal, made his entry on the country's political scene. As a matter of fact, it was the reformist religious movement, the Arya Samaj, and the struggle to free India from foreign occupation led by Mahatma Gandhi that were the two guiding movements that fired the spirit of young Basdev in his mission to make Hindus conscious of the values enshrined in their scriptures, which would give them back the dignity. Sone Walu, Jag Chalu, those who are asleep, wake up, was one of the numerous wake-up calls that were used to drive home to the laborers the feeling that they were being trampled upon and they had to stand up for their rights. He delivered his first public sermon at Kassi in Portuguese, and after that, the Jan Andolan, or the People's Movement, saw the light of the day. One of the Jan Andolan's initiative in the 1940s was to teach the villagers how to sign their names in Hindi. In those days, only adults who could write their names in English, French, or Oriental language were allowed to vote. As a result, the number of eligible voters increased from 145 to 72,000 in anticipation for the 1948 general election. This eventually had a massive impact on the result of the 1948 general election, which was the first step towards universal suffrage. A record number of colored Creoles and Indo-Mauritian were elected to the Council of Government of the modern-day Legislative Assembly. Still in the 1940s, the ongoing struggle of the laborers and workers was intensified to improve their working condition and everyday life on the island. On September 13, 1943, a strike broke out on one of the sugar plantations. The situation quickly deteriorated and police was called to the scene. They opened fire on the crowd, which had become hostile. This was the first open confrontation between the laborers and their exploiters. It was a great day for the laborers, but sadly, some of their compatriots lost their lives, among whom a 33-year-old woman by the name of Angelique Coupen, who was pregnant with her first child. Their death, particularly that of Coupen, was the trigger for a great mobilization within the workers' movement. After that, the Girmitias started to see the light at the end of the tunnel. With the development of sharecropping, many Indians had acquired land and had become free planters. Many decided not to return to India and settle for good in the country. By dint of their hard work and determination, the Girmitias managed to improve their social and economic position in all walks of life and aspire to the highest position in the country. Since the granting of universal suffrage, the political landscape has been dominated by people of Indian origin. The first Prime Minister, Sir Seebaluck Ramgoolam, was a Mauritian of Indian origin and led the country for over 13 years. In 2008, his son, Prime Minister Navin Chandra Ramgoolam, unveiled Sir Seebaluck's statue in an ancestral village in Bihar while declaring himself a son of the soil. His Excellency Kasam Utim, the longest-serving president of the Republic of Mauritius, having been in office for 9 years, was on an official visit in India in 2002 when he was conferred an honorary doctorate degree by the Jamia Millia Islamia University in New Delhi. His Excellency Rajkeshwar Paryag was another Mauritian president who became so emotional that he broke down and burst into tears when he visited his ancestral village in Bihar in 2013. The current Prime Minister, Honorable Praveen Jagannath, is none other than the son of late Sir Anirudh Jagannath, who had served both as President and Prime Minister of Mauritius. The country also counts today among the descendants doctors, lawyers, accountants, and other professional, senior administrative and executive cadres. To conclude, I would like to quote Geeta Phogat, the woman wrestler who has been immortalized in Amir Khan's movie Dangal. She says, "Pasine ki sihayi se jo likhte hain hum apne iradon ko, उनके मुकद्दर के पन्ने कभी कोरे नहीं हुआ करते," which mean those that seed their ambition with their sweat are never left with an incomplete destiny. Jai Hind, Jai Mauritius. Thank you.